Good afternoon, everyone. It's super excited about today's live Q&A and who we have today. I'm super excited. Can't wait. So without further ado, before we get started, I just want to explain why we've created this live Q&A every Thursday at 4 p.m. So when the pandemic started back in March, my team and I were sitting around wondering, well, how do we get back to our community, especially dealing with real estate? We could, give food, give money, and so forth like that. But we really wanted to go a step further, and that is, let's educate those about real estate during this pandemic and all that they can learn. So that's what we've created. That's what today is all about. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Izumi. Izumi is part of my team. Thank God. I'm grateful to have her. And Izumi, take it away.
Thank you, Tanaka, and I am so grateful to have Steve. I was telling Danica, Steve, that, I am here because I think you're responsible for this. When I shop for living homes as a photographer, you really inspired me. And I got on this path of, becoming a green realtor. And now I've been really trying to promote the sustainable design homes. So I really owe it to you, and thank you so much. So I'm going to introduce Steve. Steve Glenn is a founder and CEO of PlantPrefab. And PlantPrefab is the nation's first prefabricated design and manufacturing company dedicated to sustainable construction, materials, processes, and operations. And it was spun out of Living Homes, a sustainable design development company responsible for dozens of award-winning prefabricated homes, including the nation's first LEED Platinum certified home, which Steve is now sitting in. And my background is also upstairs of where he's sitting. So we have limited time, so we're going to dive right into the questions, Steve. So the most common questions I get from people is the difference between prefab and manufactured home. If you can kind of define what prefab homes are, that would be great.
Well, prefab is an industry term, and it includes manufactured homes. It actually covers 4 major building systems: manufactured homes, modular homes, panelized homes, and pre-cut or kit homes. So prefab is a meta term that describes those 4 major systems.
Right.
Your question might be, what's the difference between manufactured and modular? So manufactured, that's a designation that indicates that the home is created in conformance with Housing and Urban Development, HUD code. As such, they can't be permanently attached to a foundation. They have to be movable. Cities can and do specify where you can have mobile homes. That's what they're commonly known as, mobile homes. Banks can discriminate in financing because they're more, frankly, like cars than a home. In contrast, a modular home built in big Lego pieces, big modules that are built off-site and typically craned into place on-site, that conforms with local building code. They cannot be discriminated against. They can, with respect to zoning or financing. That's also true with panelized or pre-cut or kit homes. So HUD code or manufactured homes, trailers, those are the only ones that have very specific requirements about where they can go and how they get financed.
So homes like prefab homes are considered normal SFR. It's no different from traditionally built SFR, correct?
Exactly. Yep. A modular home, which we do modules and panels, legally in California, and we've built in other states, same is true there. Legally, they're considered the same as a site-built home. There's no disclosure requirements on title. Again, we have to conform to all local building code. Or zoning, I should say. They can't be excluded anywhere, and banks cannot exclude them from financing. So yeah, for all
Yeah.
intents and purposes, they're the same.
Thank you. So this is my favorite questions. Can you discuss some of the benefits of the prefabs or modular homes such as PlantPrefab?
Yeah. Well, so I'll speak generally and then talk about us specifically.
Mm-hmm.
When you build offsite construction, prefab construction, first of all, you get to build in parallel to the site work, right? Normally, when you build on a traditional process, it's very linear. So first you have to do grading and then foundation, then utilities, then framing, then electrical, plumbing, finish work. So it's a long process. It's a linear process. And there can be weather delays. Subs can be overscheduled, can extend your whole construction time, which is why you commonly hear, count on it taking twice as much time as you thought. In parallel with what we do, as the site work is happening on site, we're building offsite in parallel. So that's why it can take half the time. And we're building in an indoor facility. So no weather delays. It's full-time staff, so no issues with subs who don't show up. We're located, our first factory is located in Rialto, California, which is about halfway between LA and Palm Springs. And we pay our workers a great living wage. Those same folks can make 2 to 3 times as much working on the west side of LA or in Northern California, where costs are much more. You can buy a new home in Rialto, new home in the thousands. So that's another advantage. It can be lower cost. Not always, it depends on what you're doing and where. Always save time, can be lower cost. And then with us, we're very focused on sustainability and health, and we do a lot to reduce the ecological footprint of our homes to make sure that they're as healthy as possible. So those are some of the benefits you get building with us.
And so I think you have told me before how your plant prefab products especially really works well in the urban market, such as LA. Is that correct?
Well, it can work anywhere. It's just that the demand for custom architectural homes happen more in urban markets, out in communities. That's where we see the greatest demand. And those places can be the most expensive and the hardest to general contractors. So, yeah.
So can you discuss in average? I know it could vary from where the site is and all the other factors, but is there any average square footage cost that you can discuss?
Yeah, I honestly don't know. I mean, we do everything from accessory dwelling units to we've done a 16-unit multifamily. So the prices for the modules from the factory have ranged from $135 to $400 plus per square foot.
I see.
Tack on another 40 to 50% for site work and transportation and installation to get the hard costs.
Right. So you just said the magic word ADU. Have you noticed any increase in demand for the ADU with your company?
We have, for sure. Yeah.
And where have you been installing those mostly? Everywhere?
Northern and Southern California.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow. I think after the Uzli fire, I went to your panel, not the panel, the presentation to talk to the victims of the fires. Did you find that the ADU, the way that you approach them to build the ADU while they're actually working on the main house, was that a popular solutions for many people?
No, most people, we did it for one client, and his ADU was installed a couple months ago. Actually, back in May. Was it May? Yeah, May.
Okay.
But No, most people are just moving forward with their homes
Okay.
that are
Okay.
working with us. I don't know about
Sure.
others.
Sure. So tell me, you mentioned what differentiates plant prefab from other modular or what we call prefab homemakers. What really differentiate your company?
Yeah,
Maybe some of the specifics.
yeah. So some of the companies out there, uh, like Connect Homes, great
Mhm,
company, they just do standards, A, B, or C, and they're the
mhm.
architect.
Right.
Um, we're more focused on custom.
Mhm,
We work with any architect. I mean, we
right.
have in our marketplace, if you go to plantprefab.com and click on
Mhm,
living homes, you'll see a number of standard homes,
right.
great architects like Ray
Mhm,
Cat, who did
right.
home, and Kieran Timberlake and
Mhm,
Scarpa, excuse me, Kodo Design out of the UK. So we do that, but mostly we uh, customize those designs, and then we can work with any architect.
mhm,
As long as they design to our design guidelines,
right.
we can build for them. So that's a big point of differentiation.
Yeah.
And as I said, our focus on health and sustainability is pretty different. This is the first home ever certified LEED Platinum in the history of the program.
Mhm,
LEED
mhm,
is a building certification program. There are 4 levels of certification. It's point-based, so you get points for things that make your home more energy or water
mhm.
efficient, more efficient from a material resource
Right,
standpoint, better indoor air quality. Based on that, you can get certified silver, gold, platinum.
right,
This is the
right.
first one ever. Not just prefab, the first home ever to be certified platinum. And we've had almost 30 homes certified platinum, which is way more than almost
Wow.
firm or prefabricators. So that's another big point of differentiation.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I most admire about your company. So when you mentioned that you work with any architect. So what does that process look like? So do most of your clients um, come to you knowing that they want the prefab, or do they go to architects and then they discuss the prefab as one of the options, or what would be the most ideal scenario for homeowners or developers who acquire the land, or do they even just consider prefab before they acquire the land? What's the best scenario?
Well, I don't know about what's best. It kind of
Mhm.
depends on,
Or common maybe.
yeah, I'm not, so all the above.
Okay.
We get people, home building your own home is
Hmm.
not an impulse buy. People do a
Right,
lot of research. They
right.
tend to hear about the problems that people have traditional ways, the
Hmm.
scheduled ways, the change orders, uh,
Hmm.
tend to hear about prefab and how that can be faster and more predictable. And so we have people who are going to their architects to saying, hey, I want to do this prefab. And we have architects, particularly those we've worked with, who are referring clients. So it happens both ways.
Hmm.
The
Hmm.
only thing that's ideal is for us, so we quite often get plans that are at a schematic level
Hmm.
that we review and say, well, here's how we would do this prefab. So they were designed in a traditional way, particularly if the architects
Right.
never prefab before. And we say, well, here's the things we would do to build this with prefab. We see that a lot.
Hmm.
Um, there are changes at times in dimensions that need to be made
Hmm.
to make it work most efficiently.
Right.
It's best to do that before engineering because it gets
Hmm.
more expensive to do it after. We have done it after engineering.
Oh,
Now
really?
it's
Yeah.
re-engineer. It just takes time
Hmm.
and money, but um,
Right.
it's expensive and it can take a long time to do this a traditional way.
Right. So far, what are your client base like proportion wise? Do most of them homeowners themselves, or do you work with a lot of developers? What's the
Yeah, we have
percentage?
both. I don't know the percentage, but we have both,
You
and we
have
have
both.
both.
Okay. So one of the things that I have been sort of struggling with, I am trying to speak to the developers or people who are actually building, may not be necessarily homeowners. And the kind of resistance I get is, they don't know what this prefab process looks like, and um, they also think that it's more expensive. What's your perception of the market in terms of receptivity of prefab modular homes in your experience? Like,
I mean, we're the busiest we've ever been, and we've grown since March, and we're going to be building 2 new factories over the next
that's
2 years.
that's great. Congratulations.
Like,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
excited about the people we're talking to, but
I'm glad to hear that. So did you say since March
yeah, we've
in
grown.
pandemic? Do you
Yeah,
think that pandemic has anything to do with it?
a little bit, just because we happen to have a big project, a 25-unit project in Lake Tahoe, and
Oh, wow.
is on fire. They just can't build them quick enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of that is, and this has been widely reported, people now feeling greater flexibility about where they can live,
Right.
and increased interest in having
Mm-hmm.
second homes. So I think to a certain degree, but mostly the housing industry is so far in good shape.
Yeah.
Prices
Yeah.
are increasing year over year, and so we're benefiting from that.
Mm-hmm. So going back to ADU, with the new law and state, uh, it feels like there's a lot of ADU discussion. And how do you think that this modular, especially plant prefab, stand in terms of the ADU market? Do you see that the ADU is going to be going with your company, like plant prefab? Is that a great? I'm sure it's a great option, but what can you say about that?
Well, as I mentioned, we have a bunch of ADU projects. We've done a number. We have a bunch that we're working on. We are seeing a lot more interest, and
Mhm.
ADUs is no different than any house
Mhm.
you do on site. If you're
Mhm.
going to build it on site, there's more complexity. It can take more time. Uh, we can be a quicker solution, and depending upon where you are, it can be lower cost.
Mhm.
Cost is not always an advantage. It depends on what you're doing and where. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, we are seeing a lot of interest.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, I am so glad to have this conversation with you. And you mentioned that you have 2 more plant factory opening, and that's also in Rialto.
Uh, oh no. And nor do we have. I mentioned over the next couple of years we'll
Oh,
be
I
open.
see. I
Yeah,
see. So
we're we're
I'm sorry.
looking for space.
Yeah, and so the Rialto factories, you said it remained in operation all this time. Are you still doing the tour?
We do not have open public tours. We are doing them extraordinarily selectively for people who are very, very serious near-term clients.
I see.
We're obviously very concerned about
I
COVID.
see.
So it's nothing we're doing. We used to have this show home open for
Right.
tours on Fridays, my home, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and the factory every Wednesday and Saturday. So as I said, because of COVID, it's all
Right. Right.
more
So then
private.
the best way that people can get to know about your company is the website plantprefab.com.
Absolutely, yeah. We have a lot of information there.
Yeah.
I do
Okay.
have a question, Izumi, if you don't mind.
No,
Just
not
because
at all.
you, Steve, if you don't mind, I know you touched on it, but maybe it's a one-liner or one sentence description. If there are agents right now watching this and they have clients that are interested about having a prefabbed home, what is the best way for an agent to describe what your company is and how it differs from your competitors?
We do custom, high quality, sustainable homes, and most competitors don't.
Great. That's perfect. And I really appreciate you sharing that, because I think there's a lot of realtors out there and investors that don't know enough about it and don't know how to talk about it on an intellectual point of view and the pros and cons behind it. So that's excellent. You obviously know what you're doing.
We've been
Well,
doing it for a little while.
yeah, he's been at it for some time, and
Yes.
yeah, and
And you mentioned that you're opening up other factories. Where are the other factories opening, just so people can hear that as well?
We're looking at sites that range from Sacramento to San Bernardino County. We're looking for 250,000 square feet. So,
Awesome.
yeah.
That's
do
awesome.
you install out of state, Steve? Do you you
Yeah.
do? Like
Yep.
it can go basically anywhere as long as the truck can carry transport.
Exactly. But the further away it is, the more it adds to the
Right,
transportation.
obviously. The carbon footprint as well.
The cost, and at some
Right.
point it becomes less economic.
Yeah, yeah, it makes sense.
Great. Well, I'm going to definitely put your website, and that's the best way for people to learn more about what your company does. The last question I want to ask before Izumi asks her last questions is, you talk about you work with architects, but if somebody was to come to your company and say, Steve, do you have an architect? I just want a prefabbed home. Here's my money. I just want a prefabbed home. Do you have that ability to work with people like that and give them architects?
Yeah, well, so what I mentioned earlier is there are two general ways people work with us. Online at plantprefab.com, under living homes, we have a growing number of standardized homes from world-class architects, as I mentioned, Ray Cappy and Karen Timberlake, Kodo, and Brooke Scarpa, Eve Bahar, who's an industrial designer. So you can pick one of those.
Okay.
And you can have it standard, or we can customize it. So that's one way of working with us. So the answer is yes, and they're online. And some of the models you can actually configure like a car, which is kind of cool, with finishes and fixtures you select, and you can move through in a 3D real-time environment and see what it's like.
Oh,
And
wow.
then, or you can select any architect, and we can work with them.
That's great. Thank you for explaining that. And so people understand that. I really appreciate that.
Sure.
Well, thank you so much, Steve. I always get inspired talking to you, so I appreciate your time, and thank you so much for spending this time. And I'm sorry the live stream didn't work out, but we'll post it, and so we can all put it on our individual Facebook page and everything else.
Awesome. Yeah, no problem. My pleasure to be with you guys, and I appreciate your support and ongoing support and interest, and photographs, by the way.
Yeah.
And thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Izumi. And I'll make
Thank
sure
you.
have
And we'll send you the link, Steve, so you can post it.
Okay, will do. Great. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
Bye.
Bye.